Welcome to In Our Community. I'm Vidya Pradhan. My guest today is Kanyon Sayers-Roods, a California native artist, poet, author, activist, student, and teacher. Kanyon's art has been featured in the DeYoung Museum, the Somarts Gallery, and several other places. In addition to serving as a messenger for Native culture, she has made it her life's mission to talk about decolonization and to share her experiences and knowledge about California Native Americans. As a creative artist, her emphasis is on promoting understanding of the relationship between humanity and the natural world. Welcome, Kanyon Sayers-Roods.
Thank you. Mishmin Tuhis. Kanrakat Kanyon Coyote Woman Sayers-Roods. I would love to open this up with a song.
Thank you.
And this is a grandmother song. We honor our grandmothers, their grandmothers, and in all Mother Earth, for without them and without her we would not be here. We share this time and space together for a reason, so with that humility and gratitude I offer this grandmother song. Moi moi o no, moi moi o moi moi no, moi moi o moi moi o na. Moi moi hey ayo konale moi moi o no moi moi o moi moi no moi moi o moi moi o na ayo konale moi moi hey ayo konale. Oh, no son.
Wonderful. Can you tell me a little bit about the message you said before the song began?
That song came to me differently than it was taught. So out of respect of my mentors and my elders, I always share that it's Kanyon's grandmother's song. But in our culture, it's always a beautiful thing to share music, to share songs. My mother believes that when song, ceremony, and dance stop, so does the earth. So I've always opened up things and spaces with song and positive prayer or in a good inflection.
And what does the song signify?
Honoring our grandmothers, because we are a matrilineal society, passing knowledge from grandmother to mother to daughter, as well as identifying ourselves as people of the earth. So with humility and gratitude that we align ourselves and just remember to be present.
Why is it important for us, the larger community, to be talking about California Native culture and who are the original inhabitants of this space?
Well, with a lot of work that I do, there's a term called Indigenous Protocol. And Indigenous Protocol is actively being aware of the spaces that we occupy, the indigenous histories, the original peoples, the original ancestors, and the original knowledge of the environment that we are present on, because today's settler colonial mentality is slightly absent of the sacred. And through colonization, there's always other people coming in, staking claim and disregarding the original inhabitants, and as well as the original stewards of the territory. This territory is known as Ohlone territory. I have a map that shares that there are so many tribes and languages just between San Francisco and Monterey Bay. There are 8 languages between San Francisco and Oakland down past Carmel.
Wow.
I happen to be from Indian Canyon, which is right there in the Mutsun linguistic territory. There are many tribal groups and tribal bands of the area. So there is no Ohlone tribe, there is no Mutsun tribe, there are many bands. And I happen to be of Indian Canyon Nation.
Wonderful. And so how did these bands live cooperatively across this small space? Today it seems strange that there were so many languages and so many little pockets of culture in this space.
Well, I actually have another map that shows California. There are in excess of 250 languages spoken in California alone. And it's amazing because California is a rich and dense area that people tend to gravitate to. There wasn't a need to fight for resources. And so having different peoples of territories, we were sustained by our environments, but we were also very culturally aware and sharing. We were multilingual people. There are territories and tributaries of rivers where we would trade and interact with each other. There was no universal language such as what we're familiar with English, but there are many languages and cultural practices. So there was a lot of cultural sharing, multilinguality, multilingual beings, and amazing songs that could travel past Pomo country all the way down to Santa Barbara, past Chumash, all the way down to almost San Diego.
Across tribes?
There were songs.
Across languages?
Yes.
How did that happen?
There are ceremonies that were shared along the coast. Even the ghost dance that hit multiple states during times of cultural suppression. The song came up in resiliency. The dances came up, the ghost dance came up in resiliency. But a lot of California Native dances and songs and ceremonies were shared between many people. There is an amazing ceremony that is a bear dance that people far north can recognize all the way further down south. And it was people who would travel. People would come from many territories to a space to participate in ceremony together. And
that's why the oral traditions, I guess, are very important. Because that's how you disseminate information and knowledge and even culture.
Exactly.
Isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. Now, coming back to indigenous protocol, I'm assuming that this was something that was important even when there were just Native American tribes in the area, right? How did they interact with each other with respect? How did the protocols work then?
Well, me being a 21st century Native, I can't speak to the exact occurrences between my ancestors, but I know whenever you visit a space that is generally not your familiar territory, we have different ceremonies that are around how the world came to be, how Mount Diablo was part of how the world came around, and the positioning as well as where the solstices and equinoxes are. But when you travel, either for trade or as we are a matrilineal society, if a young man were to marry a woman, he would be adopted into her clan, and their child would share her lineal, tribal, cultural knowledge. And it would almost be like today's women taking a man's name. It's just the reverse. Not exactly, because there are different roles, but being of a matrilineal society, it's unfamiliar in today's society.
It is. It's unusual and unfamiliar.
Yes.
In fact, it's not very well known that these tribes were matrilineal societies. Was this across California?
To my knowledge, as I continue my education, I am learning that mothers, aunties, grandmothers had our circles where everything was discussed as being life givers, but also communal people to ensure that a final decision wasn't made in haste, a final decision wasn't made with ego or a drive to make a resolution immediately. It was thought out and brought to the circle with everyone. And so that is what I've been learning over time. I know many circles, many peoples have their practices and cultures that I may not have the means to speak upon, but as I continue my education, that is what I'm.
Is it also very democratic?
It feels as such. What we recognize democracy today. I can't speak a lot on how it once was, only because a lot of California history has been disregarded and sometimes swept under the rug in some instances, because the United States has a unique history of cultural suppression of the indigenous peoples, and a lot of archival material has been destroyed as well as just disregarded. I go to classrooms and I visit 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, and I talk about the mission curriculum. To me, the missions are death camps. It is painful to have to watch kids build these as if it's a great history lesson, which it is. It's part of history, but it's a one-sided history. It is the history of the victor, the history of the colonizer, the history of the suppressor who denied our cultural identity. And then the waves of genocide that transpired in California are atrocious. There are continual residual pain and scars from colonial trauma.
And this leads me to the decolonization, which is a very strong initiative of yours. So can you tell me a little bit about decolonization and your involvement in this?
to question where and why and how things came to be, from the habits that we have to societal trends to the demands of how one must act and interact with our environment. We need to decolonize our mentality on how we engage with everything around us. Because if we decolonize our diet, we are acknowledging that we need to start re-indigenizing our diet, finding the original foods and maintaining our diet with the seasons instead of exporting, importing, instead of monolithic agriculture. And then when it comes to decolonizing our mindset, why do we come to be complacent when it comes to certain educations, when it comes to certain influences on how our decision is made? Because the concept of voting is not quite how our community would come together. And so we need to re-engage on how we can be communal people, as well as realign ourselves with our culture and our awareness of being part of our communities. And it takes a lot, but it's a lot of questioning. Like, why is modesty so ingrained in us when that was, I would generally assume, a more religious influence and
mission influence.
Yep. And it's forcing, like, when someone tells me that I need to dress a certain way, I'm going to look at them and say, if I were to dress in my traditional regalia, because what we wear is not a costume, it is regalia, I would be wearing a skirt and a million necklaces, bare and to the world, but I wouldn't be objectified as if I am, what is the word when someone is out and, there's a dramatic word. When you can get in trouble. I'm sitting here like, we didn't get in trouble, we weren't objectified, we weren't hypersexualized, we were just of the environments. Because the weather has been amazing. And so when someone says, the traditional way to dress, I'm sitting here like, you don't know my culture, you don't know my traditions. And it's painful because today's society, what is deemed respectful, what is deemed expected. And we need to decolonize our mindset on how we come to those conclusions.
Tell us maybe an example of this decolonization that you'd like to see.
Well, indigenous protocols, acknowledging original histories. That's the foremost that I always work on, because it's the initiation, it's the integration, it's that awareness of asking permission to be there or to be present or to offer one's efforts, energies, and means. I have been to many circles, rallies, gatherings, ceremonies, openings to where they say, could we please have a local native representative to be present here to open the space in a good way, so we know, or we can focus and remind the audience that we are here in a good way and asking permission to be here, and also receiving that welcoming opportunity. So that is one of the ones I'm focusing on, but just original histories of all the territories.
What's your biggest challenge as you go about this mission? Do you encounter just ignorance, or is it resistance? Which one?
It's dominantly been ignorance. There has been some resistance, only because people have become complacent and said, get over it, deal with it, it's not as bad as it used to be, or it's just the way things are. But there's a lot of ignorance around truth and history. When I was 5 years old, a young boy said, if you're Indian, you're dead.
Wow.
Totally denied who I was. And I've asked a few other natives, and they share with me atrocious, culturally insensitive stories. And this is in the 21st century. Well, 20th. But when it comes to just the ignorance around it, and it's not willing ignorance, it is systemic. There are history books that negate truth in history. The Bay Area has reference to Ohlone or Shell Mound or Costanoan or Tamian, and they have no awareness, and there is limited funding to offer that educational effort. And so there are many people who are working really, really hard to educate, but we're exhausting ourselves just to get that little bit of information out.
I think one of the places where this was very stark was at Standing Rock,
yes,
where it really, I think maybe the rest of the world came to know what the pipeline meant to a whole culture, because they saw so much unity and so much activism around it. So I know you were present there, so could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I'm also a founder of our small Two-Spirit community, and I work with Bates. And I took a picture with a group of Bates members actually at Stanford University when it came to the May Mother's Day powwow, but we stood in solidarity.
What are Bates?
Bates, Bay Area American Indian Two-Spirit community.
Okay.
And so there's a picture of the Bates members and myself saying we stand with Standing Rock, because as far as social media allows us to reach, that we can stand in solidarity and offer our efforts and our energies to stand together if we can't physically be there. I actually did visit Standing Rock in September, and it was amazing to see so many people coming together, and Native and non-Native alike, people who are being true allies and just being community members saying, what can I do to help? How can I help? How can we raise awareness? Or how can I be a part of this and learn more? I'm willing to learn. And that was the beautiful part of witnessing that. And when we talk about we stand with Standing Rock, it's not exactly just Standing Rock Pipeline. It's about all issues of Indigenous peoples and Indigenous territories. There are many issues here in California that are going on. There are many issues in every other state around Indigenous peoples when it comes to the degradation of sacred sites, when it comes to the pollution of all of this industrialization, when it comes to the outsprawl and colonization, as well as gentrification of our urban territories. There are so many things going on that we've realized with all this turmoil, we need to come together, we need to stand together.
And the issues are often presented at Standing Rock as something that the government has a legal right to, or the pipeline has a legal right to. How do you talk about that, and how do you counter that? I know this probably needs a whole hour, but yes.
I'm not a big government fan. Especially with California Native history, especially with California Natives, when it comes to seeking federal recognition or acknowledgement on any federal level, the government doesn't want to identify us because they set parameters. Same thing as what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do. They identify us as sovereign peoples, as sovereign lands, and then they go through and they're like, oh, by the way, we lied. All of those treaties, they were signed and then they were not acknowledged. It's a continual act of genocide. It's literally waves and waves of genocide, a legitimate Holocaust, an entire effort dedicated to the cultural erasure of original histories of the Americas. When it comes to the history of the land, of the earth, when you think, if we stretch our arms out really, really far, we think of humanity from the time Homo sapiens was officially a thing, all the way tip to tip. We have humans, colonization, we have American history right on our finger. Our fingertip is right when California was established, right when we started to acknowledge the true history, because we think we're in 2017. Yeah, BC or BCE, but we were alive, we were living, we were kicking way before that. And the history of America is how many years? 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. How many years is that between 2017 and 1492? And who were the people that Columbus met? What was the language that they spoke? How long have we had that opportunity to learn about that? And it's nowhere in sight in any history books. Well, some history books, but you know what I mean.
How do the Indigenous people keep their motivation going in the face of this really depressing scenario? How did you get up that will to get up and talk about it and preach?
Passion, desire, the will to continue that. The next 7 generations, it will be a beautiful space for our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, as well as when we acknowledge that the 7th generation prophecy was saying that we are that, and we need to step up and we need to change and make the world a better place. The same with many of the prophecies and the conversations of how there will be a paradigm shift and women will be standing up stronger. And we're noticing in all communities that women are standing for rights and just for acknowledgement, and for we need to shift and engage with our environments and our communities. There are many ways that many cultures and many religions are saying there needs to be a change, there needs to be an awareness. And as an Indigenous person, I am motivated to honor my ancestors.
What is the 7th generation prophecy? I have not heard of it.
I can't speak a lot on it, only because it's not exactly our people's prophecy, but 7 generations from the time when the earth started, or one of the cycles of the earth, that 7th generation will rise. And we are of this time that the change needs to shift. And the way I always use that is 7 is a sacred number. And as in our community, 3 and 4 is sacred, and of course adding those. But when it comes to the 4 directions, or our traditional colors are red, black, and white, Ohlone peoples. And when we think about past, present, and future, or if we think the 4 directions, north, south, east, west, Father Sky, Mother Earth, and Center Universe, we acknowledge these numbers and these directions. And I always want to think that if I can do good, or if I can affect another generation or a peer, that they can make an effort for their decision to care about how it affects not just their children, but their children's children and their children's children's children. When I visit classrooms and I talk about the missions and the gold rush, I say, don't be like the gold miners who were greedy, who blew up mountainsides to gather that gold, because the pollution of those explosions went into the rivers that their own children can't even go swimming in. So let's not be like them. Let's care about how our actions, our decisions, our efforts, and our directional energy don't focus on immediate greed, don't focus on immediate gratification, but how our actions will affect everyone around us, and not just people, not just animals, and everything that has a life and that has a spirit.
And I think one of the things that I think people who don't care for the environment don't seem to realize that the earth will recover. We won't.
Of course.
Right.
Of course. And so if we want to have a good life, we want our children to have a good life, we need to care about what we're doing, because the earth can shake us off whenever she wants. But if we want to enjoy our presence, and we were so brainwashed, we're totally about a consumeristic, materialistic, disposable, convenient society that we don't care. Oh, it doesn't matter. Oh, my little item throwing away is going to go here, or the little effort of what I do. But if you notice, people become complacent and more do it. So if one person cuts across the grass, then there starts to be more people who do it, and then you have a trail, and then you have the disregard of how that path and how those plants are no longer going to grow anymore. The same way when you throw away trash or let an animal go potty in the same spot, it burns a hole to where it can no longer do good things or grow strong. And we need to care about how our actions affect everything, and we need to be accountable. That is one of the biggest peeves I have, is accountability. How are you and I affecting each other and our environments? Accountability with road rage. If someone just goes, yeah, go ahead, it looks like you need to go in, or, oh, look, I'm going to go in here and you come right in here. Just that accountability of not just saying, like, I deserve this right of way. Be like, no, we're all going the same direction. Let's merge properly. All the way to accountability of how I played a part in an argument between people. That humbling experience of accountability.
And it feels like that's a message that is missing from our contemporary education.
Very much so.
Is that something that your activities are trying to overcome?
I'm attempting to. I attempt to share that. When I played my rattle, I share with students that when you think about Native peoples and you think about hunter-gatherer type mentality, it's not just being of the environment. This is 100% deer. This is a deer femur and hide and deer toes. And I share with the children that we don't just hunt for food. We don't just hunt for gain. We don't really hunt for trophy, but we also appreciate the life that was lived and the gift that it gives. There's a ceremony, there's reciprocity. When I go pick herbs, I offer something to it to thank it for its life. And when it comes to all of these things that we interact with, we need to remember how we are affecting it. And it's really important. And so I share that accountability and I share that awareness, because with the tiny little impact I have with these young generations, it might offer a little bit of insight.
Tell me about some of these interactions and what you've come away with after meeting these young children and talking to them about it.
It gives me hope. That's one thing I'm really happy about. When I witness these young ones, some of them are excited about history. Some of them get really, really sad. They can't believe how some other people, colonizers, can look at other people and see them as subhuman, and to do and validate atrocious crimes against indigenous peoples. And when I share with them the importance of having that full cycle, that understanding of the give and take, or that reciprocity of how we impact our environments, from herb collecting to hunting and interacting, that we acknowledge our impact and how our impact can last, and how this rattle has a second life, even after the initial life that it once lived is no longer present.
So what can we as the larger community do towards reclaiming this love of the land? Because I feel like this message, like if I look at my own children, they absorbed this message when they were younger, but then as they grew older, it sort of dissipated, and you keep getting drawn into the consumerist mode of thinking. So to the people who are watching this show, what would you like to say for them to learn more about the history of the land which they occupy?
Of course, to learn.
And what can they do towards helping towards your mission?
Well, continue your education, continue reaching out. I actually have a few book recommendations, and they are of A Crown of Thorns by Elias Castillo, who actually had records, witnessed records of the missions. There is Benjamin Madley, who wrote An American Genocide, talking about California and the genocide against indigenous peoples of Turtle Island. But right here in this territory, there is a free academic resource by East Bay Regional Parks, and that talks about the Ohlone curriculum. Usually 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders get to touch on it, but even us as adults and people who want to learn more, the Ohlone curriculum is up to standard when it comes to the academic materials, all those standards, and it's a free resource online at East Bay Regional Park's website.
I see.
And so the quickest way is Google Ohlone curriculum, and there is the Ohlone past and present, the last chapter my mother wrote. And when it comes to support, it's a matter of acknowledging local peoples and local histories, and just taking a moment to being part of your community. Like, I reached out to my community, and I know many California natives are focusing on language revitalization. And I self-published this language coloring book in the Mutsun language, and I worked with Natasha Warner and Karina Luna they were developing a dictionary, and that's actually a free resource online too, of the Mutsun language. And
is it still a spoken language? Is it ongoing language, or is it mostly only for people who are studying it specifically? Is it in use, common use?
We're trying to get it back to common use. It has been a dormant language. The last fluent speaker passed away in the 30s. And so to this day, it has been not to this day, it's been slowly revitalized. But with a lot of histories and a lot of knowledge, you don't say it's dead, a dead culture, a dead language. You say it's been put to sleep, or it's been dormant, or it hasn't been awakened, but all of these things are being woken up.
How does one get hold of a copy of this book?
Contacting me, pretty much.
Do you want to give some information about how our viewers can do that?
I'm on social media. My name is Kanyon Sayers-Roods, or if you ever want to follow #Roaming Ohlone through social media, he has traveled with me. Roaming Ohlone, Roaming Ohlone, and he has traveled with me, and so I'm tagged in many of his pictures, but he is helping educate people. Or my website should be under my tagline, IndianCanyonLife.org/KSR, my acronym. Should be doing a update to that website pretty soon here. But social media is the fastest way, or IndianCanyonLife.org, because Indian Canyon is my focus, my passion, and my future.
Thank you so much, Kanyon. It was a pleasure having you, and I hope our viewers take this opportunity to check out some of the culture and history of the land that we are standing on. There is a wonderful message here for all of us. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you.
And that's all for our show tonight. Goodbye and namaste.
Oh.